Alright, today class, we'll be doing more with inequalities. Today we'll be dealing with inequalities with two triangles. In the last lesson we talked about, you can tell if an angle is bigger than another angle depending on the opposite side, or if a side's bigger than another side depending on the opposite angles. We also talked about what links you must have in order to form a triangle. So now we're talking about comparing two different triangles. This is called the Hinge theorem. It says if two sides of one triangle are congruent to two sides of another. So here we got one side that's congruent, two sides that are congruent. And the included angle of the first, so here's our included angle, it's the angle in between the congruent ones, is larger than the included angle of the second one. So for example, you could have 80 and 42. Then the third side of the first one, which would be AB, would have to be greater than DE. So it's very similar to what we talked about in the previous lesson, only now we're just comparing two triangles, but really the two triangles we're comparing have two sides that are congruent to determine which triangle has that bigger third side. We also have the converse of this one. So again, you have to have two pairs of congruent sides. If that happens and the third side of the first triangle is bigger than the third side of the second triangle, then that means that angle B is going to be greater than measure of angle E. So it works backwards as well. So if you understood the previous lesson, this should make sense to you as well. So if we have to decide if these are less than, greater than, or equal to, those are our options. So number one says the length of BC and length of EF. We want to figure out which one's greater. Well, we have our two congruent sides. Then we look at our included angle. Well, this one has the bigger included angle, so the bigger one is BC. So BC is greater than EF. Number two. Well, got our two congruent sides. We also would know that we have congruent triangles from last chapter, which means these corresponding angles are going to be equal. Number three, we have one side that matches, but actually we have two because of that reflexive. So we look across from 1 and 2. 2 is opposite of the larger side, so 2 is the larger angle. And then here we're supposed to write an inequality for x, so we're actually going to kind of solve something. So the way we're going to set it up, well again, they share this one, or not share that one, but they have that one congruent and they share this one. So if we compare, we got 85 here, do a little math to find our angle there. Well, 180 minus 65 minus 35 is going to be 80. So if we go off of our theorem, this one has to be greater than this one because it's opposite of the greater angle. So we say 3x plus 5 is going to be greater than 2x plus 10. So now we solve. Let's subtract 3x to both sides. So 5 would be greater to negative x plus 10. Then I'm going to subtract 10. So negative 5 is greater than negative x. Got to get rid of the negative. So we divide by negative 1 or multiply by negative 1. And remember, when you're dealing with inequalities, you got to flip the switch when you divide by a negative or multiply by a negative. Not when you subtract, but when you multiply or divide by a negative. So here if we divide by negative 1, 5, the sign switches, so less than x, or x is greater than 5. This would be your solution to that problem. So you solve an inequality just like you would do in equals. The only difference is when you divide or multiply by a negative, you have to flip your sign, or flip the switch, so to speak. Excuse me. Really don't want to die on YouTube. Alright, word problem. Two hikers leave their camp. The first hiker travels 2 miles north and then turns 100 degrees to the west and travels another 3 miles. The second hiker travels 2 miles straight south before turning 70 degrees to the east and travels another 3 miles. which hiker is closer to camp? So they're starting from the same spot. Now when you're reading a map, north is up. So he goes 2 miles north. Then he turns 100 degrees to the west. So on a map, west is always left. So if he turns 100, it would look like this. The confusing part that some people get is that the 100, if you're going this way and turn 100 degrees is right here. So be careful with that. Then it says he traveled another 3 miles. So this would be a length of 3 miles. Now let's look at the other hiker. We'll use blue. We go south for 2 miles. And then we're going to go 70 degrees east. East is to the right. So if we wanted to make a 70-degree angle, actually, that would look something like that. So this is 70 degrees. And again, we're saying this is 2 miles, and this one is 3 miles. It says, which hiker is closer to the camp, the first one or the second one? Now, if we use our Hinge theorem, and we make these into triangles, so there's a triangle there. This would be 80 degrees, because we have a linear pair. Then if we go down here, and we connect them, make a triangle there. Then, oops, I might be doing this wrong. I made the triangle the wrong way. Triangle should go back here, back to base, right? So that would be 110 degrees. We have congruent sides with 2 and 3. And we just got to look at which one has the bigger angle. This has the bigger angle, so this one would be farther than this one. So which hiker is closest to camp? That would be the first hiker. So, you do have one problem like this on your assignment. Use this as an example to kind of figure it out. Think about which direction is north, south, east, west on a map to help you out. Your assignment then for this chunk is right there. So 3 to 9, 16 to 18, 22, and 32 to 35 on pages 338, 341. But then I also want you to do that. There's a small review at the bottom of page 341. It's 1 to 5. So I'd like you to add that to your assignment as well.